Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today we're going to be talking about a developing cold front situation for Western Australia and a very significant rain threat for Queensland and New South Wales. In fact, we have 150 millimetres now in the cards of parts of central Queensland in around 5 days' time, so we've got quite a lot to get through in this forecast update. If you haven't already, then please do consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video as well. Your support is greatly appreciated. Taking a look at the current satellite picture around the nation, you can see already those clouds starting to build up just offshore from Western Australia. That is the cold front that is coming through today, but then there's 4 others that are going to be following it. And then this cloud here, it isn't precursor to cloud cover to the Queensland and New South Wales situation. In fact, it's just annoying convection that's moving across the Australian mainland. The real deal on this rainfall will be starting in around 5 days' time, which is what we're going to be talking about right now. Starting things off with the New South Wales situation and Queensland. It's not so much a New South Wales situation, rather it is a Queensland situation. We've got significant rainfall expected between Mackay and Bundaberg in around 5 or 6 days' time, but it's a general weather forecast along the coastline for the next 5 or so days. There will be light to moderate rain showers here and there. Maybe a dry day around the Sydney area today, but it will be a little bit wetter tomorrow up towards Byron Bay, Lismore, Coffs Harbour and the Gold Coast for the Sanctuary Cove International Boat Show. The conditions probably won't be that good this weekend, so if you are planning on going there, probably today is the day for that. But Saturday and Sunday, a couple of showers here and there, nothing too crazy, but then we're going to start to see a lot of rainfall creep further up the coastline, and you can already start to see enhanced shower activity here just offshore from Queensland in the early parts to the middle parts of next week. It's going to be later next week when we start to see this upper level tropical low move through New South Wales, and that's going to combine with a moisture pool over Queensland. We're going to flip things over to the GFS forecast model here to get a more accurate picture of things. So starting things off here, next Wednesday, we've got these cold fronts moving across Western Australia, which we'll talk about later on in the video. And then we've got these little rain showers here that are starting to fire up from a trough that's going to be extending over Queensland between the more inland desert communities of Queensland, and that's going to combine itself with a nice moisture pool which is going to be sitting between Queensland and New Caledonia over the ocean. Sounds complicated? Well, it is. It's a complicated weather system. We're not 100% sure if it's going to go ahead like the forecast is saying, but in any case, this tropical low here that's going to be situated just offshore, non-cyclonic tropical low, I might add, just to avoid any confusion, it's going to be driving an awful lot of rainfall ashore by next weekend into the early parts of June. Now, this is a weather pattern that we do typically see in the summer months and into the autumn months up here, but it is still not uncommon to happen in the early winter months. It's not completely out of the forecast or question at this time, but next weekend looks like an awful lot of rainfall is going to jam itself up along the coastline from this trough that's going to extend between Townsville right down towards Brisbane, and the rainfall will be significant. In fact, heavy falls are possible next weekend. Both Saturday and Sunday, up to 100 millimetres can be expected if this rainfall event does go ahead. And if we were to talk about rainfall accumulations over the next 10 days, just to get a maximum number that we're talking about, and like I said at the start of the video, 150, 160 millimetres. Overland, it's more so about 130 to 140 millimetres. Gladstone, 115. Rockhampton, about 80, and then down towards Bundaberg, about 90 to 100. Hervey Bay and Fraser Island, probably about 80 or 90 millimetres apiece there. In short, especially in the mountain valleys just inshore from the coastline, we could be talking about a flooding event up here, but this is certainly rainfall that they do need. This is not bad news on the forecast. 100 millimetres falling over 2 days. It's not the end of the world. Flooding can be avoided, and flooding to property certainly can be avoided if you take necessary precautions if you do live in a flood-prone area, and I'll be providing more information on that as the event draws closer. But right now, considering it is about 7 days out from the forecast period of today, there's really not too much value in us talking about it and making all these predictions right now, because as you just saw by me flicking over to the Eastern Weather forecast model, it's not even on the forecast there. It's just a couple of showers moving through the coastline. It is a completely different scenario, and the Eastern Weather calling for the bulk of the rainfall to be across central New South Wales, which once again would be a great thing to have on the forecast for them, but the GFS is also predicting that too. But if we were to take a look at the Access G3 model, and it's not often a model that I like to use for long-range forecasts, or even for forecasts full stop with a lot of kind of weight behind them. In this case, the Access G3 is calling for something relatively similar to the GFS forecast model, calling for a bit of rainfall across central Queensland, 80 or 90 millimetres or so, but the coastline really does miss out on it. And unfortunately, Rockhampton, Gladstone and the surrounds around Rockhampton, the Wide Bay area, they are in desperate need for some rainfall. Far North Queensland as well won't be missing out, by the way. Regardless of what happens, they could see up to 120 millimetres over the next 10 days. But once again, stock standard weather up there. It would be fantastic if it did begin to dry out, though, because they desperately need some dry weather up there to just relieve the soil from being this big kind of marsh up there, because they are ridiculously wet. And I've been seeing it in the comment section basically every single day. Like I said, give me a weather report for your location in the comment section down below. I'll try and respond to all of them today. And yeah, thank you so much for the recent support on these videos. It has been fantastic, but I do digress. The Eastern WF is calling for also quite a wet week across a lot of Central Australia too. The GFS not so much on board with it, but there is still, from these cold fronts, the chance of thunderstorms firing up across the central parts of Australia. That normally does happen on the really big, strong cold fronts, but not so much up into the northern parts of Western Australia, or even into the Northern Territory, which are expecting a spot or two of rainfall. It does happen maybe once or twice a year, but for it to be happening this early in the winter season, that's quite unusual. And the reason why I don't like the Access G3 model is, I mean, just look at this. This is something I can't even make sense of on the forecast. And they've been calling it for a couple of days in a row now, so it kind of is a possibility at this time. We do need to be watching the forecast closely. And if it gets to within the 5-day forecast period where we're looking up to 200 or 250 millimetres up here around the Broome area in this straight line, if I see that again on the forecast period, maybe tomorrow or on Sunday, then I might be calling for this being a possibility. But at this time, I just don't see a giant trail of basically what looks to be a cyclone's passage across the nation, moving through into Queensland and driving all the rainfall down here. And I also find it very hard to believe that Broome would be wetter than Sydney at this time of the year in a 10-day forecast period. So this is an interesting forecast to be looking at. The Access G3 can give us some pretty wacky solutions sometimes, and it's not a forecast model that I would like to bet the house on, but it can be fairly accurate in the 10-day forecast period. So like I said, we have to use it and get an accurate picture of everything. What I do think it is accurate at is displaying the amount of rainfall that's going to be falling in Western Australia, which leads us very nicely onto the second part of this video, which is going to be some wet rainfall around the Western Australia region. This is a lot of rainfall coming through from 5 consecutive cold fronts that just spoiled the 5th one by the looks of it. But there's already a cold front starting to line itself up just offshore. This isn't a big cold front by any stretch of the imagination, but a couple of showers around the Perth metro area are possible in the evening hours of tonight beyond about 8 p.m. Also some rainfall expected on the Capes as well into Saturday. Some more rainfall for the Perth metro later on into Saturday too. So this is kind of looking like it's going to be a wet weekend or so, maybe about 5 or 10 millimetres there. But the real deal doesn't start until early next week. So late on Sunday afternoon, a couple of showers expected. But for the Monday morning commute, looks like there's going to be some rain sticking around. And the Monday evening commute in Perth looks like it's going to be a wet one. So exercise extreme caution on wet roads, especially because we haven't had much rainfall this year yet. So there's still going to be a lot of oil soaked into those roads, which is just going to come straight up from the first really significant rains. And as such, it's going to turn the roads from pretty good roads into absolute slippery slopes. So accidents are basically guaranteed with 20 millimetres on the cards. Now, the rainfall really doesn't pipe up until Tuesday around lunchtime by the looks of things. And once again, very much reciprocated amongst forecast models. The Eastern WF, the Access G3 and the GFS right in sync with each other in terms of timing, not so much in terms of frontal strength and power and so forth, but we'll keep using the Access G3 or the Eastern WF forecast model here. But from Tuesday morning, big cold front coming through, and it looks like the first big shower band of the year is coming through Tuesday evening. That's where we see those violent damaging winds, those really cold temperatures, and those isolated but very heavy showers, and that looks like it's going to be a possibility Tuesday evening into Wednesday morning. And yeah, Wednesday morning could be a vicious one indeed, especially down towards the Capes too. Expecting some very strong winds there, which I'll touch on in just a second. Another big cold front sweeping up on Thursday, and then a massive one coming through next Saturday for the start of the June long weekend for WA, which is kind of a sad thing to have on the forecast. I was looking forward to getting away out of Perth, maybe going inland into the country, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be doing that now with this weather on the cards. So that is a little bit unfortunate, but a big time cold front there. And in terms of peak wind speeds, we'll be talking about very, very strong wind gusts there, probably up towards 100 to 110 kilometres an hour around the Perth area, and maybe, yeah, a bit stronger down towards the Capes as well. But in terms of peak wind gusts from these cold fronts, it's going to be very windy indeed. Down just south of the Capes, actually, we're talking about 110 kilometres an hour for Albany, Augusta, Walpole, those sort of areas. Up towards Perth, a little bit less violent, but still about 80 or 90 kilometres an hour. Rottnest Island, maybe about 95 kilometres an hour. So if you want to go and see some significant frontal activity come through. Book your ferry tickets now because those winds will definitely run those ferry services off. This is the first really significant cold fronts of the year. I can't overstress that enough. Winter will break this week, which is fantastic news for Perth. If you do have trees that are at risk of dropping big branches on your house or onto your property, then probably best to get them trimmed up today or this weekend, preferably. Make sure you're taking extreme care on those roads, but it looks like, and even into seeding time as well, inland, looks like we're going to get enough rainfall to promote some seeding inland, especially in towards the western parts of the wheat belt. We could be seeing 25 to 30 millimetres, and it looks like in there it's not going to be ridiculously heavy rainfall. It's going to be more consistent rainfall that's not going to turn out to be major flooding. So 25 to 40 millimetres there, which will extend as far inland by the looks of things as Hyden and Merredin. We'll be seeing up to 20 millimetres in both communities respectively. Lake Grace about 15 millimetres, and then some of the more remote communities further inland maybe about 10 millimetres, but the rainfall will get more hit and miss in there. Snow lovers, though, it will be disappointing. Not expecting any significant snowfall on the Stirling Ranges. There is a slim chance of it. The Eastern WF actually calling for snowfall around the area, which is kind of a foreign concept. We don't see snow around, Darken down there. We're just outside of Wagen and then down towards Northcliffe. So the EasyCMWF model is a bit of a bogus model to be using for snowfall. The Access G3 also not calling for any snowfall, and the GFS I find typically has too low of a resolution. But in terms of best time to look for snowfall, I'm going to be going for Wednesday evening. There is a slim chance of seeing some snowfall here and there on the Stirling Ranges. Probably not the Paronga Ups. It's going to be a bit too early in the winter season there. But I'm going to say Wednesday morning or Tuesday afternoon, there is a slim chance of snowfall on the Stirling Ranges and an even slimmer chance on the Paronga Ups. So if you do want to go down south and try your luck at it, I'm going to give it a 20% chance at this time. Temperatures will be cold enough. Looks like it's going to be about 4 or 5 degrees Wednesday morning on those on that little coastal plain down there, about 6 degrees Celsius, damaging winds and heavy rainfall, perfect for snow. Looks like it's going to be bitterly cold Wednesday morning by the looks of things, and even colder on Thursday morning, so make sure that you do have plenty of warm gear if you're going to go down south and hike, but don't bet your money on it, don't bet the house on it. It is an unlikely scenario at this time. Now, that was a very long-winded forecast for cold fronts, but I do have to get all of the necessary information out there. We're going to now move up into the Indian Ocean and take a look at a developing tropical cyclone that has been on the forecast for a while now. The GFS still calling for this tropical cyclone for some weird reason by the looks of things, and it's been calling for it to be happening for the past week or so now, and it looks like it's basically a guaranteed. It's in fact going to be forming sometime on Wednesday. In terms of wind speeds, doesn't look like it's going to be tropical cyclone strength, but it definitely looks like it's going to get close to moderate tropical storm status by Mateo, France. It's well away from Australia, by the way. It's not going to be any impact to land. It's not going to get a name from the Bureau of Meteorology, but it still is a slim chance of tropical cyclone genesis. So that's a very interesting thing to have on the forecast into early June. In fact, 2nd of June is probably when it's got its best chance of becoming a tropical cyclone. This is something very strange to have on the forecast. Do I think that it's going to be a tropical cyclone? Maybe, but not 100% sure. And another thing that I'd also like to talk about, the final part of this video, is those dual tropical cyclone threats, one in the Bay of Bengal and one in the Western Pacific, just offshore from the Philippines. We have twin systems forming at this time. The one next to the Philippines will take a couple more days to form, but when it does form, looks like it's going to become a powerful typhoon by early next week. So there'll be coverage on the Cyclones Extra channel. Make sure you are subscribed to that. There's a link in the description down below. And yeah, this system looks like it's going to get to Category 3 status on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. And then in the Bay of Bengal, we've got a pretty worrisome situation moving into India. In fact, this is kind of a gruesome forecast to be looking at. Potentially a humanitarian crisis, a storm making landfall late on Sunday. Has pretty strong winds by the looks of things, probably up towards 180 kilometers an hour, somewhere between Bhubaneswar and Kolkata on the northeastern side of India. That is a pretty nasty thing to have on the forecast, and it's going to create a monstrous heat wave as well across northern India, where we're talking about temperatures up to 52 degrees Celsius. So if you want more information on that, make sure you are tuning into the Cyclones Extra video, dropping about 2 hours after this one. I'll be covering all of the nitty-gritty on potential tropical cyclone Ramal and the potential typhoon typhoon in the Western Pacific region as well. So make sure you are subscribed for that. But around Australia, tropical cyclone season well and truly done, and it looks like we're going to have to wait until later 2024 or early 2025 for the next tropical cyclone to fire up on the forecast. Just to recap things, that big rainfall event that is possible in central Queensland, it's still about a week away, so I'm not 100% certain about the details right now. And those big time cold fronts for Western Australia, they're going to be big systems, so make sure you are prepared, especially south of Perth. Make sure you're trimming up those trees that are at risk of dropping big branches, and get that seed ready, because it looks like by the later parts of next week it's going to be prime time to start seeding. If you can seed today or seed this weekend, because that rainfall is on its way. Tuesday onwards, it is going to be a nice wet forecast. But yeah, that has been all for me. Give me some feedback on this video in the comment section down below. Please do leave a like as well and subscribe. Special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. Their support is greatly appreciated. But that is all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.